Investigations are supposed to bring closure, to answer the confusing questions, but not this one. The latest report on the Air India crash does the opposite. It adds to the confusion, it raises more questions than it answers. Now, just to be clear, this is not the final report, this is a preliminary assessment. Yet, the language and the tone make one thing clear. It was not a machine problem, nor was it a carrier problem. So basically, don't blame Boeing or Air India. Then whose problem was it? Let's take it from the top. The preliminary report was published on Saturday. The probe was led by India's Aviation Ministry. They got inputs from other sources as well, like the US Aviation Authority, Boeing, and former pilots. Most of the report is routine. It talks about the condition of the plane. It mentions the experience of the pilots, and there's nothing alarming in those parts. But in the final pages, the report details the accident. Let me piece together the timeline. Around 11 a.m. on June 12th, the plane arrived in Ahmedabad. Air India Boeing 7878. Around 12 p.m., it is cleared for its next flight from Ahmedabad to London. At 1:26 p.m., the plane is cleared to taxi. At 1:37 p.m., the plane is cleared for takeoff. Around 39 seconds past 1:38 p.m., the aircraft lifted off. 3 seconds later, it reached peak speed. And this is where things get confusing. After reaching peak speed, both the fuel switches were turned off. That too within a second of each other, both the switches. We'll explain these switches in detail, but for now just know this. These switches control the flow of fuel into the engines. If they're turned off, the engines do not get fuel. And this report says that this is what happened. The fuel switches were turned off, so the engines were getting no fuel. At this point, the pilots were talking to each other. One pilot asks the other, why did he cut off? The other one replies that he did not. As they speak, the plane is probably losing lift. 13 seconds after takeoff, the fuel switches toggle again. The switch for the first engine turns on. Then 4 seconds later, the second switch also turns on. So the first engine begins to recover, but the second engine could not recover. And by that time, it was too late. Around 11 seconds after 1:39 p.m., the flight recorder stops recording. This is what we know from the investigation report, the preliminary report. Clearly, the fuel cutoff switches are key to what happened. So let's take a closer look at them. These two switches are located on the console. One switch for each engine. There are two engines, so there are two switches. If you turn them on, the engines get fuel. If you turn them off, the fuel is cut off. It's as simple as that. Now, the switches have dual protection. First, you can see the brackets on either side. This is meant to ensure that pilots do not accidentally hit the switch. Then there is a lock mechanism. You can't just toggle it like a normal switch. You must lift the switch first, then toggle it to run or cut off mode. As the name suggests, run allows fuel supply, cut off shuts the fuel supply. The whole idea is to ensure that there are no accidents. Now, this report does not assign blame directly, but you get the drift. It suggests that someone or something turned off the fuel switches. And India's Pilots Association is not happy about this assessment. They have criticized what they call bias towards pilot error. That's what pilots are saying, the Pilots Association. Same with the victims' families. They're calling this report vague. And that is the problem here. This report raises way too many questions. Tonight, we'll focus on the two most important ones. Number one, why is the cockpit audio incomplete? The report only paraphrases a short exchange. It does not identify the speakers, nor does it give us the whole transcript. And experts have questioned this lack of information. They say it's important to identify both the speakers, review the conversations, and publish the transcripts. The question is, why did the investigators not do this already? Why haven't they done this? Why did they publish this short, paraphrased exchange and not the whole thing? It's almost like they wanted to lead people on. So that is the first thing that needs to be answered. The second question is this: why is there mention of an old fuel switch advisory? This one, it dates back to 2018. It was issued by the US Aviation Authority. And what did this advisory say? It said that the fuel switch's locking mechanism was potentially compromised. Basically, the lock may disengage on its own. Now, this advisory was meant for the Boeing 737 plane. But the same system is used in the 787 as well, the plane that crashed. Did Air India get it checked? No, they did not. They said the notice was not mandatory, it was just an advisory. It did not compromise the airworthiness of the plane. That's what Air India is saying. And yet, this advisory finds mention in the probe report, which makes you wonder, could the switch have unlocked on its own? And if it did, could it have toggled to cut-off position? Also, what if there was an electronic issue? Could it have tripped the fuel switch automatically? Like I said, lots of questions. Unfortunately, we do not know the answers because the report gives us open-ended information. Information that can lead to many assumptions and interpretations, which is not the point of a probe. A probe is supposed to give us clarity. Also, the bias against pilots is quite evident. Both of them went down with the plane. It's very easy to suggest that their actions led to this crash. After all, they cannot now defend themselves. So here's what we say. Don't give us half-baked information. Be clear about the events and the findings, because this is not just about a technological mystery. This is about closure for families. 241 people died on that plane. Their families deserve clear answers, not speculation and half facts.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select a language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.